And Daisetz, I'm not going to go into detail, but he's influenced me a lot, and his study in Zen and Shin Buddhism and many others are very inspiring. Anyway, the topic of Satori, or awakening. And he characterized 8 elements that represent those symptoms at the moment of Satori. One is the beyond the rationality. I'm just trying to translate from Japanese to English. And this is something that you cannot expect by the logic and have the conclusion, but it is as if to go beyond the intellectual process. And I don't know what would be the example of that, but I think it makes sense when I say that there's a universe beyond the universe of the mind, and the Zen experience or the Satori experience is like penetrating through the mind. And it can happen in various ways, but that's one of the characteristics. Something like what is impossible cannot be realized, but the one who go through this process is then he as if jumps through that irrationality. Second is the intuitive observation. I think he mentions about here the William James. There's the book about the various experience of spiritual, something of that nature. The book he wrote, various experience of spiritual insight, or something like that, from the Harvard professor. And he's referring that, but what would be the point here is that when you realize it, it is a deep realization, and it shows that's absolute, some kind of a ultimate knowledge, if you were to use such word. It is direct, personalized, and that is fulfilling for that person. And what logic can do is just to interpret what it may mean. So it's the form of something happens internal part of who we are, and it's deep enough and have the sense of absoluteness. But it is as if to drink water and realize it's warm or cold. That's the nature's way, its own experience, person's own experience, as it is. So there's nothing to go beyond and cannot be argued by someone else who do not have that sense of tasting the water, warm or cold. The fourth is kote in Japanese, affirmation. What is the absolute, almost like authoritative, is cannot be negative. Because if it's negative, it doesn't add any value in your life. There's no power to push your life forward, or it does not give us a space to be relaxed, have a peace. And Satori experience may be explained by using the word of negativity, but it is about to cut the root of the dualism, so to speak, and to accept everything as it is. And there's a sense of Well, let's leave it like that. So he says the Zen is absolute affirmation of what it is. Fifth element is beyond the consciousness, or my word often is beyond our mind. We have a limitation in our mind, but when it comes to Satori or awakening, there's a sense of going beyond. The experience itself is each person's own, but there's something that makes us feel there's something connected to the rest. And this moment of Satori is as if there's an explosion of it, as if not to be absorbed by the absolute of the universe, but there's the sense of us bundled up with all the limitation is gone or melted. So with the relief, liberation is the peace, and there's a sense of one arriving at where you are looking for. There's a saying of coming back and sit in the house, and it's explained in sutras, or similar to prodigal son in the Christianity. So there's a sense of arriving. So it's beyond, but you arrive. Number 6 is there's no characterization related to personality. So there's no sense idea of love burning, hugging with someone, love, marrying, Father, God, Son of God. So those are more of a character of a personality. But there's none relation to that. And I think he's pointing this about nothingness. So there's no personality in it. It is more of an intellectual sense of clarity. And it happens as if the lightning hit. And my personal experience while awakening is very much like that. It came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden I realized everything is at peace. There's nothing intellectual about it. And I noticed that Eckhart Tolle explained the same way, that he didn't know what happened. It took 6, 7, 8 years to figure out what happened. In my case, it took 40 years, and I haven't figured out quite well. But the symptom I feel is similar, at least in my view. So there's a sense of some uniqueness that also he talks about. It could be something that someone hit him, or have a cup of tea, or some attention about the basic way of life, or pointing certain phrase in the sutra, and that might trigger that. But there's nothing related to the romance or the voice of the word from the heaven. None of that. There's no character, colorfulness. Everything is very basic. It doesn't attract anything. That's the setting. And I can relate to that. I was just sitting, and I went through that. And everything changed. 7.1 is the koyokan, I don't know what's in English, appraisal, upheaval probably is the one. So because of the limitation to be broken, that sense of appraisal happens. It's not passive, very positive, and there's some meaning in it. So it means there's the infinite potential of expansion from small each individual or person. So the binding is gone, it's the sense. We may not realize that usually, but typically in our life there's the constraint and dependence of some form. But that's the idea of the consciousness, but this Satori goes beyond that, and therefore relating to unconsciousness, no mind deep in our brain, araya consciousness in Sanskrit term, where there are lots of unknown amount of memories are in our being, and usually they are quiet when we live in our life, but that unknown thing explode as if they were not listened to by that time. Therefore, by having the possibility of being listened by someone, having the moment of being sitting quietly, or whatever the case may be, it happens. And then you see this as if a lightning, the light shines and it just goes through across the whole universe as if. The last one is the characteristics of being at the moment and in the moment. And therefore Satori here, the point is not the gradual, but the transformation in a split-second moment, so to speak. And if it's, he used the word tone, that is, tone is like dull or straightforward, as if you get hit. And that's the opening or breaking up of the binding. And that's the character, especially by Eno in China in 7th centuries, to explain what's visible and to be experienced in the way how we may approve or realize that Satori experience. So that's the 8 points, and whether this discussion is meaningful or not, I don't know. But at least point to me that what I've been sharing in my YouTube videos relating to many subjects, calm and quiet mind, melting into nature, two universes go beyond the mind, liberation, openness. I don't know what else I talked, but I think there could be a thread that we can see how this Satori experience can be gained, as if the binding condition is gone when certain level of effort to go beyond the constraint of the mind is made. All I can say now is that I had that experience, and I'm going through, that was 20 years ago, and I have the similar experience here and there. We can talk about it, but one thing I may point is that as I talk now, I can hear the clock ticking, the light through the window and the shining light through the curtain and the reflection of the light on the floor and the quietness and the space I'm in. And then I sense this sense of vibration, it happens often, that there's a sense of resonance, that everything is as it is and there's no boundary. So probably what I can say is that that's just a kind of a symptom or characteristics. Each person experience may be different, but I tend to think there's a big change as to how we perceive the world, even though the society, how it functions, the news, difficulties may remain. But there is the different universe that we can connect to. And if we have that sense, through whatever means, Satori or gradual change of starting to get the taste of it by looking at the sun or the leaves and the light and the whatever is happening, as if you can talk to the plant or even the desk and chairs and all around. That's the element of liberated sense that is beyond the constraint of the mind. So just a brief information, and I may not have translated because I just read through this quickly and thought maybe a good time to at least to talk about it and remember it. I may want to come back later, but it may be interesting if we may be open about such possibility for liberation through certain experiences. Actually, Nakayama-san is a very good friend who passed away 20 years or so ago, and he said he didn't have a big experience like was talked about, but I know him in person, and he told me that there was some sense, but not as clear. But as I have the book he has written, and I've read one of the books of many of them, many times, I know he has a very good insight, understanding, awareness, and all of that comes with that Satori experience. So there may be different avenues, the ways to climb up the mountain. And the Ikkyu Zen master says, if you go up to the mountain, you may see the moon shining in the sky. We watch the same moon. Thank you.